Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you guys are. Guys, I've got some big news for you. So before I get into this video, smash the like button. Guys, I've been reading an article and Mauricio Suleiman is looking to make David Benavidez the mandatory challenger of Canelo Alvarez. Now, we know that David Benavidez is WBC #1 and he has been for some while. But the WBC are looking to make David Benavidez the mandatory and rule on it soon, so when Canelo would have to fight him in order to keep that belt. I actually think that's a very good move from the WBC. Canelo Alvarez has been accused of ducking David Benavidez, and let's be honest, it's those three fighters that people say that Canelo is ducking. So they say that he ducks Charlo, Benavidez, and Andrade. The biggest fight out of them three is the Benavidez fight. Most people would actually say that it's the most dangerous fight as well. So the WBC ruling on that would be great, because then Canelo would have to fight him or vacate his WBC belt. I think Canelo will take the fight. The only thing is that I think Canelo wants to fight Bivol. So I don't know how that would work. But what I think Canelo should do, I think Canelo shouldn't fight Bivol. I think Canelo should fight David Benavidez. I think the Bivol fight will always be there. I think the Benavidez fight is probably a bigger fight than the Bivol fight. And I think it's a much more winnable fight for Canelo Alvarez. I think it's a fight that he actually wins, in my opinion. But I think it's a much bigger fight. And I think it's just a more appealing fight to the fans. I think it's a fight that people have wanted for a long while. And it's a fight that people think that Canelo has been avoiding for a long while. And I think the WBC making a ruling on that and making Benavidez the mandatory, because the WBC have been accused of protecting Canelo Alvarez, which they have in the past. I mean, they made, what's his name, Yildirim, I believe, was it the mandatory? Was that the WBC? I think it was, which was terrible, to say the least. But this would be a stance from the WBC making a tough mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, and a fight that Canelo would have to take. And I don't think Canelo would vacate, because I think it's too big a fight. I think it's a big money spinner. The only problem is that Benavidez is with a different network. So how are they going to come to terms? Because Eddie Hearn's going to probably want Canelo to stay away from that fight, because he'd probably want him to fight Bivol so he can keep everything in-house. I think Canelo needs to take... I don't think Canelo should be influenced by Hearn, because Hearn now is in a very difficult spot. AJ's just been beat by Usyk. He no longer has the hold on the heavyweight division. Really, his only big star, I mean, AJ is a big star, but he hasn't got the same kind of star power because he's lost twice now. And he isn't going to have the same kind of star power that he had prior to losing to Usyk twice. So Eddie Hearn now is looking to get Canelo to fight his guys. I mean, keep everything in-house. And because if Canelo was to fight Benavidez, Eddie Hearn's probably not going to have much to do with it, just like he didn't have much to do with the Plant fight, because the PBC don't like Eddie Hearn and they don't like him anywhere near their events. And the only way Canelo's going to get the Benavidez fight if he fights on PBC and Fox. It's not going to be on DAZN. Canelo's kind of a free agent because of that. I don't think Canelo's going to be held back by anybody. And that's why Canelo's doing a fight-to-fight deal, because he wants to have control of his own career. And that's why I think he parted ways with De La Hoya, because he wanted more control and he wanted to pick and choose what he wanted to do. I think this would be a very good move by the WBC. Forget the Bivol fight, forget the Bivol fight. This is a much bigger fight with Benavidez. Forget Bivol. Bivol fight can happen down the road. The Benavidez fight is the fight that the Mexican fans want, and the fight that everybody wants. Make that fight. I think it's a much bigger fight than the Bivol fight financially. It's also a dangerous fight, in many people's eyes as well. And it's a fight where Canelo can get a lot of credibility. I think after the Golovkin fight, Canelo really needs to fight Benavidez. I wouldn't mind him fighting Bivol again. I think Bivol's a big fight, and you can't say as Canelo's fighting an easy opponent. You would be fighting the guy that beat him. But I think he either needs to. I would prefer him to fight Benavidez, because I think it's a much bigger fight financially, and it's a fight where he's fighting at 168. Canelo should fight Benavidez now. I think enough's enough. He needs to fight Benavidez, in my opinion. We need to stop saying, oh well, Canelo, he fought Bivol and whatever. I think he needs to fight Benavidez. I think that's the fight that needs to happen. I think the Bivol fight, although I want to see it, and I do want to see Canelo try to go and avenge that loss, because that's what makes somebody great, is trying to avenge his losses. And basically now Canelo would be a massive underdog against Bivol. So we would get to see if Canelo is actually just found his level, or he can't beat Bivol, like Anthony Joshua can't beat Alexander Usyk. He found his level. Or can Canelo make the adjustments and beat Bivol? I think that's something that I would like to see. However, I want to see the WBC make Benavidez mandatory of Canelo. I want to see Canelo fight Benavidez, because I think that's a fight that we all want to see, and I think we'd all be excited about. I think we'd all probably be more excited for that one. Even though I think Bivol's a tougher fight, I think we would be more excited, seeing him fight Benavidez, because I think Benavidez is a fight that could get a lot of crossover appeal. I think that would do huge numbers. I think it might even do over 1 million pay-per-view buys, because I think there would be a lot of interest from Mexico. I think there'd be a lot of interest from the casuals. I think Benavidez is a lot more bigger a name than someone like Bivol, and I think it would make for a fiery fight. And I think stylistically, I think the fights are much more explosive fight. And what I mean by that is Canelo likes people that come to him. Benavidez goes to him. He's also a lot more flat-footed, and he's fast of hands. If Canelo Alvarez can't hurt David Benavidez, Canelo Alvarez might find himself getting outworked by David Benavidez, because Benavidez has got fast hands. I don't think Benavidez is a very powerful guy. Canelo's got a very good defense. But I do think Canelo's going to nail him somewhere along the line, because I think Benavidez's defense, I don't think it's, look, I initially thought that his defense was very poor, but I think his defense is a little underrated. I think he knows. I think Benavidez is a little bit more skilled than what I thought. However, there are still some holes in his game. He's very flat-footed. He is open at times, and he is open to getting hit with that big shot. And then Canelo has got power, and I think Canelo has the power to hurt Benavidez. But if Canelo can't hurt Benavidez, then we've got a very, very interesting fight, because I think Benavidez could potentially, with his fast hands, if you adopts the right game plan, I think Benavidez could outwork Canelo. But my pick would be, I think Canelo Alvarez would stop him mid to late rounds. Again, it comes down to Benavidez's toughness. But I think that fight is a fight that everybody wants to see. I think we've got to be honest. I think the Benavidez fight, we would be all excited for that fight. It'd be a massive fight, huge event. It'd make a lot of sense. I think Canelo should give the fans that fight. And I think the WBC, I think the WBC should put pressure on Canelo by making Benavidez the mandatory. Because now, then what we'll see is Canelo going to go and fight Bivol? Or is Canelo going to give up the WBC belt? I don't think Canelo should. I think Canelo should look to stay undisputed and look to defend as many times and clean out all the challenges at 168, and then probably fight Bivol in maybe a year or two. Bivol's young, so Bivol's not going to, he's not going to get worse. If anything, Canelo probably needs to fight him sooner rather than later, because Canelo's the one that's getting older. And he's also had a lot of fights. Canelo's had a lot of wear and tear. This guy's had a lot of training camps. He's had a crap load of fights. He started very young, so Canelo hasn't. I think Canelo probably has another 5-6 years left in the game, in my opinion. But the point out I'm trying to make is, I think the Benavidez fight is a fight that I want to see. Initially I said that no, I want to see the Bivol fight, but I want to see the Benavidez fight. The Bivol fight's a harder fight, but the Benavidez fight is a fight I want to see, because a lot of people think Benavidez beats Canelo. A lot of people think Canelo's been avoiding Benavidez. If he doesn't take the Bivol fight, people will say that, oh, he avoided Bivol. But I think Canelo will eventually fight Bivol again. The problem is, I think the Benavidez fight is there for Canelo. It's there. I think after the Golovkin fight, I think Canelo is in September. I think you're looking at probably January, February, maybe Canelo. I know Canelo likes to fight in May, or maybe next year he can fight in May, fight Benavidez, then fight Bivol in September. Why not? I think if Canelo's going to fight Benavidez and Bivol type of caliber of opponents, I think he should only fight twice. I don't think he should be fighting 3 times. This year he fought Bivol and he's fighting Golovkin again. I don't think he should fight 3 times. I think it's all right when you're fighting guys like Callum Smith, Billy Joe. Those guys aren't on the level of a Golovkin and Bivol. So when you're fighting tough opponents, I think 2 fights a year is fine when you're fighting that caliber. I think if you're fighting guys like Yildirim, Callum Smith, Billy Joe, and Caleb Plant, those guys, I don't consider them like Bivol, elite like Bivol or Golovkin. So he can fight 3 or 4 times against those guys. But when you're fighting the elite, like your Bivols, like your Benavidez, Benavidez, I wouldn't call him elite. I think he's a similar level to Billy Joe and Callum Smith at this point. Many people will say Benavidez is better, but at this point, Benavidez is pretty unproven. He's not beating anybody. But there's a lot of fans that think that Benavidez will give Canelo a lot of trouble. If that's the case, let's see the fight. Let's see the fight, and it's a big fight. It's a fight that I would be excited about, a fight that you guys would be excited about, because there's a lot of you that think that Benavidez gives Canelo a lot of trouble. As you guys know, I've never been a big fan of David Benavidez. I think he's looking good against the opposition he's fighting, but I think when he comes up against an elite fighter like Canelo, I think Canelo will expose a lot of the flaws that are visible to boxing fans that know boxing. I think he's got flaws, and I think someone like Canelo will bring out those flaws. It's a lot easier to look good with your fast hands against guys that are not that great. But when you come up against somebody that's a really good boxer, has a very good defense, has very good IQ, it's a lot harder, because Canelo will make Benavidez miss a lot as well. So it is going to be interesting. I am very interested to see how Benavidez gets on with someone like Canelo. I also think the fact that Benavidez has been fought in poor level of opponents, I think that's not going to help him when he steps up against Canelo. And I think Billy Joe found that out. I think Caleb Plant found that out. I think Callum Smith found that out. When you step up such a big level, generally, you don't do too well. When you step up to that next level, like Bivol was different because Bivol was really good. And Bivol was a lot bigger than Canelo, which, in my opinion, and he also skills were on another level. And Bivol actually had a decent resume. I don't think his resume was as bad as what people had. He'd beaten Joe Smith, he'd beaten John Pascal, so his resume wasn't too bad. And also you could tell that he was a very skilled fighter. He just didn't look very impressive in some of his fights, hence why a lot of people were picking Canelo. But it was never, anyone that knew their boxing knew it wasn't going to be an easy fight. But most people were picking Canelo. But the Benavidez fight is a fight that I think is a great fight. I think it's a fight that will do huge numbers. I think stylistically it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Canelo v Benavidez. Would you want to see that fight? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.